The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar presentation, EPMO as a Shared Service. We do have a few logistics to cover today before we get started. Everyone will be muted for the duration of the presentation. However, should you have any questions, I will be monitoring the chat module, so please feel free to chat with me there. This webinar is being recorded and will be distributed later today along with the PDU information. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to EPM Live Customer Success Manager, Deb West, and Senior Account Manager, Jose Levy.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I wanted to just kind of give you a little bit of background, my background. In addition to being a PMP, I have also got background as a director of a PMO. I've stood up a PMO in a network and engineering organization within a large wireless telecom company. So the things that we're going to go through are things that actually I have also personal experience with. So as we go through this, I just wanted to make sure that we're able to share this with you. In terms of this cartoon, I'm sure everybody can relate to this Dilbert cartoon where boss is talking to Dilbert indicating, make sure you coordinate with the brand manager and the category manager, and, asking him to also coordinate with everybody in the organization across all the different functions. And basically, Dilbert is just shrugging, saying, I give up, and boss is saying, let's meet again in a year. So sometimes the EPMO can appear as mission impossible. Not sure if you can relate to this slide, but it's definitely a tough job. There is so much to coordinate, as this cartoon depicts, and people that sometimes it really does feel like mission impossible. There's so many expectations, and to be able to coordinate and get cross-functional and get everybody to work together. But in all seriousness, this slide illustrates that the EPMO has to take an integrated approach. It really just begs for what this cartoon is saying. But guess what? There is actually hope. We're here because we believe and hope that you believe the EPMOs can and do deliver value. As you can see, CIOs actually give EPMOs and PMOs top grades, but it's not necessarily what the value is that we as PMOs perceive, but what the organization perceives that we're doing. So if you take a look, you'll see that basically where CIOs feel that we as PMOs are driving the value, it's really about driving, enabling, it's being able to enable and deliver versus the methodology, as you can see. In fact, Gartner indicates that by 2015, 60% of the Fortune 1000 will establish an EPMO to improve the value created by investments in projects and programs. And the majority will choose to adopt some form of reporting and portfolio-centered EPMO. Like they say in real estate, location, location, location. It's really about knowing first where our placement is in the organization. That's going to help define the type of EPMO we have, and that in fact actually defines the scope of control. So knowing where in the organization this EPMO or PMO function is going to be located determines what you're actually going to do in terms of reporting lines, what the mission is, because if we're not clear exactly where we're placed within the organizations, we may end up extending or overextending the capabilities. For example, if we're in a line of business function, as my PMO was, then the ability to influence is really within that line of business. If, in fact, it's an EPMO, really you're looking to have a span of control across lines of business, across the different functions, and able to reports, different types of measures and metrics into the organization. As you will see, now you actually have the resources, right? So you've gotten everything that you want. You know the sponsorship. You know where you're at in the organization. And really so much of it really is dependent on what leadership has defined for the EPMO. In fact, we may have the best of intentions, but at the end of the day, if leadership perceives the PMO function, the EPMO function in a different light, then we may end up doing things with different sets of expectations. As you can see, Gartner defines 4 standard EPMO types, and you can see that they're on a continuum. So this ties into the previous slide because the location of where the EPMO is determined to be in the charter defines the type of work that you go after and the type of work that you do. So to simplify this, each one of these has its own set of implications. If, for example, your organization is low on the PPM maturity model, and if the goal is to keep the executives informed, then consider a reporting EPMO. As an aside, according to Gartner, as I mentioned before with the Fortune 1000 companies, within the 60% of the organizations that we expect to adopt some sort of EPMO, the majority, as I mentioned earlier, will choose to adopt some form of reporting or portfolio-centered EPMO. And the advantage of this, again, if you're just starting out, is that it's the least invasive form of EPMO, and its measures really about timely information and recommendations. How that exists within the existing management structure is, again, it provides visibility into an area where maybe there wasn't so much visibility before, and it doesn't necessarily close the strategy execution gap where you see up in a strategic EPMO. It can make it more visible and allow appropriate action to be taken through other channels. Now, if executing strategy is a focus and you've been finding that projects are struggling with too many interdependencies, kind of at that upper EPMO level, then you might consider a strategic EPMO. If there's a high process culture and you prefer consistency and lowering risk, then the operational EPMO is what you may want to consider. And in fact, this is where my experience was within the organization where I stood up the EPMO. It was really centered around process and measurements and getting the consistency within the organization because of the nature of the business that was being run. On the other hand, in the upper right-hand corner here, as you'll see, if current market conditions are kind of forcing a radical change in the core business, or if you're experiencing significant growth through maybe even acquisitions, then a business transformation office may be one of the styles of the 4 styles of EPMO for you to consider. Now, to determine the EPMO type that best fits your organization, you first need to define and assess the organizational needs. Here you see there's a core set of competencies, and by no means is this all-inclusive, but the important thing here is to really define for your organization which items, which competencies are important. For example, and then to the right, from left to right, you see that each of these different types of competencies are critical in the black circles, moderately important with the half-filled circles, and then not required for the open circles here. But, as you move from left to right, you see that as these different organizations, these types of PMOs for your organization are considered, all of these different items that are considered critical, for example, in the tactical monitoring, would also be considered critical as you move into the strategic and transformative. These competencies depend largely, again, on your internal capabilities and requirements and should be based on the needs of the organization. You can define the type of PMO you need to be, whether it's strategic, operational, or tactical, but really based on today's market conditions and based on how many different hats we have to wear in organizations, don't be surprised if you need to shift and be able to adapt to all three capabilities. And again, that goes back to the initial discussion around what CIOs really have given the high grades for, being able to deliver and be enabling. So being able to monitor and understand and flex with the organization's needs are critical as you define and assess. Now, when you're talking about a strategic EPMO, it means that there's actually some strategic programs that would be pulled up to the enterprise level and looking at monitoring those cross-divisional interdependencies. So those are defined, but also they are planned for. According to Gartner, this form of EPMO makes sense whenever an organization really believes in the economic value of its own strategy. But at the end of the day, you just need to know that in terms of EPMO, you're going to be required to deliver services, and that's the nature of how the EPMO is evolving. Depending on the competencies and the needs of the business, we're indicating and we're seeing the trend that a services catalog with a range of services needs to be developed. So traditionally, the methods and standards have been what is most followed within the EPMO, and that's how it was at the beginning. But what we're getting to is a much broader understanding where coordination and consulting are much more important. So as you're looking at centralizing these activities, you can start building a portfolio of services such as training and methodology and mentoring on project management, even being considered the consultants, the go-to people for project management. And again, this continues to tie into what you're looking for as you're defining your core competencies within your organization. And as you're doing that, that still ties back into looking at what the needs of the organization are and how your executives and your leadership view what those value-added services will be that you would be able to offer within your organization. You know, here's what we're seeing as EPMO, and actually EPMO is already a shared service as defined by the provision of a service by one part of the organization or group, where that service had been previously found in more than one part of the organization or group. So it's an important element to know that EPMO is always on demand and needs to be accessible to the entire organization. What we're saying is that this is not necessarily a shared service in the framework of what we think about a traditional shared service like within IT of infrastructure or something like that, but really about centralization and giving the opportunity for the entire organization, as I mentioned, to access. Now the biggest difference is that making this available as a shared service is that we're proposing that there is an agreement, a shared services agreement, a service level for EPMO, if you will. So in today's shared services model, this service level agreement is to position EPMO as a shared service. So that way we're defining what the customer expectations are. So for example, maybe you as EPMO you're a multinational corporation and you don't support foreign operations. Maybe you only support, the continental United States. But these expectations and characteristics are clearly defined so that your customers understand what you're going to deliver, and there's this agreement in place. For example, maybe there's we provide a hosted service, and we have to have it represented. So that way you can show and you can measure the value that's added to the organization. Now, how do we get to this greater EPMO value? And for that, I am going to turn the presentation over to Jose. He's going to talk to you about how to get to that greater EPMO value as a shared service. Jose?
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. What I want to do now is follow Deb's description of the shared service and the value that EPMO can create, and talk about some critical success factors and some of our customers that have used this concept to generate greater EPMO value. So, to follow what Deb said, what we're trying to do here is offer the project management office as a service to the organization by enabling more parts of the organization with process and tools and best practices that are working within the EPMO. So the first critical success factor has to do with the trade-off between adoption and the trade-off between adoption value between control and flexibility. And what that means is that what we have observed is that the EPMOs that actually go for control have a lower probability of adoption of the methodology and the tool. There is a happy medium here where you do need to establish an enterprise standard while at the same time providing flexibility. So in no way are we advocating that it would be an absolute, loose standard that for the organization. So there needs to be a standard, but there needs to be a trade-off so that you achieve adoption. And we define it as, having process and tools that are being used and delivering value. So, you do need to strive for that, for adoption rather than control. So that means that you need to be more flexible. The next critical success factor has to do with understanding your customer readiness. So if you've accepted that you're going to go out and offer process and tools as an EPMO to more parts of the organization, then your end customer in mind and understanding where they're sitting at in terms of their readiness and maturity of project portfolio management will be very helpful. The EPMO is a keeper within the organization of those best practices, and although you might find pockets within your organization that have level 3, the majority of times by the percentages that we show here, you're looking at level 2 and some even level 1. So be mindful of your end customer, and also need to make them aware that this is a process and an evolution, and it's about starting at your current state and evolving as you move forward in improving your practices. So understanding where your customer is critical. The next recommendation that we make from a critical success factor standpoint is, just engaging in dialogue and understanding where the customer is in terms of how they currently work. We're showing here, one of our tools that we use, which is just a simple assessment questionnaire, and really we use it, not so formally where folks have to complete this, but really as catalyst where we can just understand, through conversation where folks are, what are they currently using to manage their projects, what do they think they are in terms of readiness, what do they want to improve within their processes and tools, and maybe it's interesting to see when the results when we use this, in several places in an organization, how the variety of answers and that different groups within the organization will have, and being able to accommodate all those different needs is ties back to that adoption statement that we made, but it also speaks to the nature of the shared service, that different parts of the organization can leverage what you have to create that value. One important point also is making sure that your end customer that you're serving as a PMO understands the level of commitment they're going to have to make if they happen to embark on improving their project and portfolio management process through your service. All of you know that when you take on a PPM project management improvement initiative, you need to have sponsorship. So whoever it is in the organization that's leading this group needs to be involved and understand the level of commitment that they're going to have to make, and it's usually long-term. These initiatives, even if we're talking about simple project inventorying, we're talking about months, if not years, before we actually start seeing significant value. The second is, having a sense of how they currently manage and track work, the tools that they use, the attributes, the metadata, and making them understand that now you're going to have a system, the process is going to be integrated, and all of that is going to be for you to leverage as you move forward in your improvement initiatives. There has to be a process owner internally within the target end customer, and what that means is that there's folks that are actually going to have to own the application from tracking the usage of it, and also from maintaining it. So business changes, requirements change, and as such, the tool and the process will have to change accordingly. So there needs to be an internal process owner at the end customer that's actually going to participate in maintaining the system. So the key takeaway is make your end customer aware that what the requirements are when they embark on this journey, and also that it's a long-term commitment. It's not immediate. Part of being successful with offering EPMO as a service is providing ongoing support. So there might be an initial implementation, and there might be accessing tools, processes that you have, but ongoing there needs to be support in terms of process methodology training, further implementation and configuration of the tool at that first wave when they get into the system and they launch. Obviously software tool training needs to be made available. There will be instances where different users will require help with just the basic usability of the tools, and you need to be either provisioned for that to be made available, or the EPMO needs to be the one that's actually going to support the teams. And obviously technical support that goes with the next slide that I'm going to talk about, how you need to have IT as your partner, but the issues will come up with systems, and you need to be there to respond. At the end of the day, from an EPMO standpoint, I know from an end customer standpoint, you all need to understand that this requires dedicated resources. So you need to provision for that, and I think that this is probably the most understated capability that you need if you're going to address an entire organization with your services. That you need those dedicated resources. I mentioned partnering with IT, and I think it's a very important component. Even if you're using, whether you're doing this on a cloud basis or on-premise basis, at the end of the day, we're going to be leveraging infrastructure for the entire organization. So with that in mind, partner with IT to make sure that you have all of the required policies in place, whether it's provisioning, performance, service level agreements for the tools, single sign-on, integration. It really depends on the preference of the organization and how the service is going to be provided, but regardless, you're going to have to partner with IT to make sure that you're meeting all of the standards and policies. And the quicker they see themselves as a participant, the easier that it'll be for you to require their assistance. So even in the most minimal of cases, you do have to partner with IT to bring on the tools. So what I want to do now is address 3 different case studies that we have. And the first one is a large U.S. federal government agency. And here the challenge was interesting. They have a cross-matrix business services model that reports to the CIO. And they really needed to have visibility of the enterprise portfolio and resources. So, as is typical in most cases, they were using Microsoft project plans and Excels and just flat file repositories. They didn't really have a place to register and obtain that top-down view of all the projects. It was, a straightforward requirement, through the use of EPM Live to create the EPMO portfolio inventory and resource pool for them exactly what was going on. What happened after the initial implementation, and they purposely did this, they made the tool and process available to other departments, the shared infrastructure offering. And what happened there was that different departments saw the opportunity to leverage that, leverage the learning, leverage the tools, leverage the process, and then literally sign up for the service themselves through the help of the EPMO. In this case, if every one of those different departments would have gone on their own and procured, the cost would have been, very significant. And in this case, they've been able to save, a large sum of funding they've allocated to other efforts by leveraging the infrastructure and lessons learned. Another interesting take, and it's more of the trend with this type of approach, is that while the enterprise standard was available, there was different levels of project and portfolio management readiness within the organization, and the system was configured in a way to accommodate those different levels. So in a way, everyone got to have their own configuration in a way, while at the same time trying to use the enterprise standard as much as possible in order to allow for cross-reporting in the future. Not an immediate requirement for them, but as they go along in the future, they'll be able to leverage that because all of it is within one system. The second case study I want to highlight is a state agency. In this case, they required to replace a legacy PPM Solution, fairly complex, older solution that have been implemented a number of years in the past. And the only hard requirement, other than meeting the standard portfolio project management capability, was to have a financial integration to that specific system that brings cost actuals and tracks actuals. So we were able to implement on a dedicated hosted basis and in integration with the state financial system, the PPM Solution. In this case, from an implementation standpoint, it did take a little longer, given the type of organization, state agency that they are, but the integration worked very well. And after that first wave, what we call our first wave implementation, they were able to get the value out of it. What happened after that is, having that solution available, they started offering it to other functional areas. And again, they're using a hosted model, dedicated hosted model, which now they can share with other parts of the organization. And I think that's where the value for them came, that they have all this learning, the solution that's available, and now they can leverage it for other areas of the organization. In this case, you know, and I want to highlight it was an extremely flexible implementation model for those other organizations. They basically allowed them, you know, to configure to their specific requirements. So there was really no adherence to the enterprise standard other than the financial tracking component of it, because that's the value that they were trying to get, that financial integration to their financial management solution. So that part is consistent throughout, but you know the rest of the solution components is, you know, specific and unique to each area of the organization. A lot of, I would call this one a successful implementation, and it's still growing. In fact, we have other parts of the organization that are inquiring about making use of the system. The third case study, you know, I want to highlight some lessons learned. So this one, unfortunately, hasn't turned out as successful as other ones. But, you know, here they had a legacy project portfolio management solution that was being offered as a shared service. So they already understood the concept of a shared service. Their only hard requirements to have integration to internal systems, you know, such as identity management and other security policies that they had. So, you know, we do offer on-premise solutions. So this was actually implemented as an on-premise implementation, and they were leveraging some internal resources that were previously commissioned to, you know, their shared service, and they took a big bang approach, which you know, we've learned it's not the best practice, but you know, given the sponsorship and mandate, we went ahead and customer wanted to do it, and they had it on premise. They went ahead and, on their own, and did you know, a broad offering of the solution. You know, that their success has been limited because internally they have very strict control and governance, so it's very difficult for other organizations just to sign up to that shared infrastructure. It has to do with transfer pricing and the way that they actually do chargebacks, and that going through and doing that broad offering, you know, didn't really work out as intended. The other is that in the end, the resources that were allocated were not enough, so they didn't really estimate, you know, the requirement to have the support and the resources. So while, you know, there's one, the initial organization that is using the system is still active. All of the other ones that you know, showed interest in doing it have been constrained in making use of it because of the lack of resources. So, you know, the lessons learned that we have talked about are real and have been experienced previously. So in the end, in all these cases, and in our customers that are looking to do EPMO as a shared service, you know, this is a graphical representation of what actually happens. What you have is, you know, your portfolio site, and you have department and project sites in a site hierarchy. The very top, you know, will represent what the EPMO site is, and, you know, from a roll-up standpoint, it actually allows all of that information eventually to roll up, which, you know, might be of use as you're trying to develop the organizational enterprise perspective of projects. And different organizations can have either a department or their own portfolio site, you know, just like the EPMO does. So, you know, there's different variations of this graphic, but in the end, what we're looking at is having distinct and separate workspaces, sites for the different areas of the organization. You know, there's some value to that. It gives the sponsors and the organizational, you know, the delegated PMO, the ability to control, have some control over the content, the permissions, the metadata that's there. Again, that's that issue of flexibility that we talked about earlier. And also, if they want to further develop project-specific workspaces where you can have teams collaborate, that's another value add of having this approach. So, you know, very much driving collaboration by, you know, having project sites basically coming from the department sites. There's a value of reusing best practices. So each of those departments will leverage the templates that have been created previously, either by other departments or at the EPMO level. So there's that wealth of knowledge that's available to the rest of the organization, and everybody can create their own templates also. So if they wanted to actually embark on doing their own based on their own way of doing work. So marketing does things different than IT, so marketing can have its own templates and its own artifacts in their own workspaces. So and then, like I said earlier, the benefit of having or the ability to report across this entire site hierarchy is always there for the organization. So we're coming to the end, and I just want to highlight some key takeaways from all of today's discussion. First of all, based on evidence and evolution of our customers, we believe that EPMO as a shared service, or EPMO as a service, is the next step for APMO. You can deliver value to the organization by leveraging best practices, offering as a service, and then providing the tool as shared infrastructure and platform for the rest of the organization. We've shown through our customer case studies that there are compelling benefits from doing this. First of all, you can do more with less by leveraging that PPM process and platform. And in the end, a lot of the work that's being done in organizations is project-based. So you are moving your organization forward in terms of that maturity readiness overall. Different areas will move at different speeds depending on their type of work, approach, sponsorship, but moving everyone at once by offering a service will generate value. Having said that, some of the lessons learned that we highlighted, all three different case studies were different. While they all offered a service, leveraged infrastructure, not one of them is equivalent in their approach and how they went out and to do the shared service. And the second, it has to do with all the different factors that you have to take into account. So you have to measure, the leadership commitment. You have to understand, your own project culture, not only within the EPMO, but throughout the rest of the organization. How much is IT going to support you in accomplishing this? That will drive the level of service that you will be able to offer. How much EPMO resources do you actually have to do this? Maybe it has to be a very simple and implicit approach. It can't be something so forceful and explicit because you just don't have the resources. And understand the readiness levels of your end customers to make sure that what you're offering actually matches with their needs, and you end up creating more services than are actually needed within the organization. So all of those are important factors to take into account as you move forward in offering the service. So as we move forward, our call to action is to look for opportunities to enable more parts of your organization through a shared service EPMO. And this is you're going to be offering your expertise in how the EPMO is operating and all of the different knowledge that it has. The process, obviously, and how you've implemented that, and the benefits that different parts of the organization can take from that process, and then the software tools that you have available in order to leverage infrastructure and do more with less resources. From your end standpoint, obviously, this is an idea that you want to take. You need to obtain sponsorship, which means that you need to go to the sponsor of the EPMO is currently and say, we can provide greater value to the organization by offering process and tools to the rest of the organization. and then you know, if you obtain that sponsorship, then it's a matter of assessing your internal capability to deliver more value, and you know, doing your own self-assessment of your readiness and capabilities. And you know, it was much of the same tools that we talked about previously. Do it on yourself and your part of the organization, the EPMO, to see how much you're going to be able to act as a service to the rest of the organization. With that, we would like to thank you for participating in today's webinar. And you see there are Deb and myself's email. If you happen to have any questions, you know, feel free to shoot us an email, and we'll be more than happy to address any of the topics that we've talked about today. Deb, is there anything else you would like to add?
Thank you for attending.
Okay, thanks everyone. The webinar will now be over. Everyone have a good week and good holiday. Talk to you later.